All right, welcome back to the channel, and I'm here with Paul and Ryan from Canon. How's it going, guys?
Not bad.
Very
Not
good.
bad.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Joe.
Good to see you guys. So thanks for joining us. So today we're going to be following up on the announcement that Canon just made. And as everybody's heard, we have a new lens and a new camera for everyone to be excited about. And we're obviously practicing some social distancing here, so we're doing this via Zoom or a E type of meeting. So I guess let's start with Paul and the camera.
All right. Thanks, Joe. So yeah, we're super excited about this. So what we've introduced is the C300 Mark III. And I got the bad boy right here. So take a look.
So it looks a lot like C500 to my untrained eye.
Oh, you are very perceptive, sir. This is the exact same body as the C500 Mark II. So, and that's a good point to bring up right away, is that it uses all of the exact same accessories. So, you know, any of your clients who already have a C500 Mark II, if they have accessories for that camera, they don't need to buy any more. It's the same accessories. The expansion units, the interchangeable lens mount, third-party accessories, it's all going to be exactly the same. The camera's the exact same weight, exact same balance. So like if I'm trying to, you know, put it on a jib or something like that, if I'm using both cameras on a set, they're going to be weighted exactly the same. So I can swap them in and out interchangeably so fast. It's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah. So the big difference being that the sensor is a Super 35, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So the big thing besides the cosmetics of it is you have this Super 35 sensor. Now this is the dual gain output sensor. It's a brand new sensor developed by Canon specifically for this model, and it's going to give us over 16 stops of dynamic range. It's something pretty special.
Yeah.
So
on top of that, gain, well, I was just going to ask. So you're saying dual gain. So is it a dual native ISO? Is that what it?
So no. Yeah. So I don't mean to jump on you there, sir. No. No, it is not dual native ISO. It works in a kind of a totally different way.
Okay.
So have you heard of dual pixel autofocus in our other cameras? Mm-hmm. So the basic premise behind that is that each pixel on our sensors is split into two different diodes. All right. Each of those diodes is always taking image information, the exact same image at the same time. All right. So in fact, our sensors are actually taking two of the exact same frames at the same time. And then when it goes to dump that information out, those frames are coming together. And that's how our sensors kind of work. Well, the engineers realized that they can use each of those diodes as two different images for differing gain values.
Okay.
All right. So in dual gain output, what's happening is that, let's say diode A is taking an image that is low gain and therefore low noise, right? Mm-hmm. While diode B is taking a higher gain image, and it's the image that's needed to satisfy the pixel's necessity for light in order to get the exposure and everything like that. What's happening is, so you have those two different images, and then when the sensor dumps that stuff out, it merges them together. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the high gain, the light, and all the saturation that you need there to make an image, and that you're also getting the low noise. And they come together to make one frame that gives you high dynamic range.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool stuff. But one of the kind of the best thing about it, though, is because I think people have a lot of questions about this, is that, or say right off the bat, is that there's zero temporal artifacting with this. Okay. Because I think the process I just described, some people might think, oh, it's kind of like how other systems are done, where it's multiple bracketing of exposures that are combined together or something like that create motion artifacts and everything like that. But that's not happening with this one, because they're the two frames exactly the same amount of time that are combined into one. There's no difference in there's no temporal anomalies there. So
you're not stacking frames basically that are, like you're saying, bracketing. So it takes three exposures and merges them.
Right.
So you're high speed, you're unable to merge them perfectly, right?
Exactly. That's what's happening here. So
okay.
Yeah.
Right. And talking about frame rates, high speed, does that work at a high frame rate?
So it does, yeah. So here's kind of the rules of it. So let's talk about frame rates first.
Okay.
because the special thing about this camera is that we can do 4K at the full sensor readout, so Super 35mm 4K at 120 frames a second. And if we go into the 2K Super 16 crop mode, we're going to get 180 frames per second.
That's amazing.
So we're getting there with the speed. That's for sure. For dual gain output to give you the most dynamic range, it's going to be up to 60 frames, up and including 60 frames a second when you're using the full sensor. If I go into crop mode, it's up to including 120 frames a second.
Okay.
So that's where the limitations are. If I go beyond those frames per second, then we are looking at going back to the dynamic range that we're used to with the C300 Mark II, the C500 Mark II, C700, C200, which was 15 stops of dynamic range with Canon Log
It's
2.
still amazing.
Still pretty good, yeah. But one thing, and it's something that I can't stress enough for people. I'm really excited for people to try this out because one of the major complaints always been about Canon Log 2, especially, was that it was pretty noisy in the shadows, and that's why we even made Canon Log 3, was to kind of get rid of some of those noise in the shadows. With this, I'm now getting more dynamic range, but the shadows are so clean. It's pretty amazing. So I'm looking forward for people to try it out.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, C300 Mark II performed extremely well in low light,
Hmm.
so I can't wait to see what this does.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about what other features are included with the camera.
Yeah, definitely. So, besides the frame rates and that new sensor, we have a lot of things that are carrying over from the C500 Mark II.
Okay.
So one of the big ones that was actually, it's getting really popular with the C500 Mark II is the image stabilization. It's the electronic image stabilization.
Mhm.
And this works in XF AVC mode. All right. So it's not IBIS. All right. So the sensor itself is not moving or anything.
Okay.
And what it does is it gives you a 1.1 times crop. And I know crop's kind of a dirty word, but 1.1 times crop is pretty small when you actually see it crop in. And the stabilization is really interesting because it works. It's most effective with a Canon EF lens that has image stabilization.
So it does
Um,
stack.
yeah, it kind of works. It works in tandem with each other.
Okay.
But if you don't have a lens that has that image stabilization, the camera itself has a database of algorithms. And so you go into the menu and you put in your focal length.
Okay.
And it kind of pulls up the algorithm that's best, the stabilization algorithm that's best for that focal length. So it still works. You're not limited to just using Canon lenses in that regard. But yeah, we've gotten a lot of good feedback about it, and people seem to like it so far. So that's made its way over here. Um, Additionally, for the first time in the C300 line, we have anamorphic D-squeeze as well,
Okay.
and that's good for people who want to use anamorphics are still pretty hot right now, and their resurgence is just getting stronger. It seems like so. Being able to monitor the field of view unsqueezed is really great. So 2 times and 1.3 times anamorphics you can monitor from this camera. Yeah, trying to think what else. There's some other things that we can talk about. Diffraction correction is carried over from the C500 Mark II.
Hey, tell me about that. I
Diffraction,
have no idea what that is.
yeah. So diffraction correction, it's definitely, this is, your broadcast people are going to know all about this. This is much more of a broadcast and kind of live TV kind of thing than it is with cinema. So with diffraction, the very, like the most basic way to explain it is that if I'm shooting something at a very small aperture, say like f22 and above and smaller, right?
Mhm.
As the light goes into the iris and it diffracts out from the small iris, and then it has to diffract out to cover the sensor, right? Well, in that diffraction, we lose some sharpness.
Okay.
It's an artifact that's caused by that, and it's something that broadcasters have to deal a lot with. So like live events, football games, sports, anything like that. There's times that they're shooting at a very small aperture because of the light and to get the depth of field that they need.
Yeah.
Whereas in the cinema world, of course, we're trying to shoot wide open most of the time, right?
It's the
So
opposite.
it's the opposite. So we don't really run into this problem as much. But what happens though is if you shoot at the small apertures, you're losing a little bit of that sharpness detail. as the light diffracts. And so what this is doing in XFAVC again is a little bit of a correction for it. And it's based upon, this is one that's more based upon the lenses that you have, especially the Canon lenses. It reads the metadata from certain Canon lenses, and it knows exactly how to correct for that diffraction. And you would see something very similar to this, like in a raw transformation process, but it's happening in camera in XFAVC.
Okay.
This camera. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to complement that camera, Canon's also got the new lens. So Ryan, you want to tell us a little bit about that announcement?
Absolutely. First, I want to compliment you on your shirt that you're wearing there. I haven't seen too many of those around.
I'm trying here. It's only my second time ever wearing this shirt. I got this at CINE last year, so.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, we have a really exciting announcement as far as the lens goes. Obviously with our CINE-SERVO line of lenses, we've kind of become a standard out there in the industry with Super 35 format coverage. With the CINE-SERVO 17-120 and the that extremely unique 50-1000 that's out there. So everybody was clamoring for a lens that kind of fit in the middle of that. They loved the 17-120 but wanted more range. So this is what we're giving them, where it's the CN 10x25 IAS. So it's also known as the 25-250. So you've got a really great medium telephoto range option now in our CINE-SERVO lenses.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about the lens and some of the features you guys rolled out with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it carries over all of the great, Canon image quality that we have in our cinema lenses. So it's got a really warm color tone that really complements skin tones very well. The minimized breathing being a Cine style lens. And of course it's, built like a tank, just like the rest of them. And, one of the greatest things about the lens is the size of it. It's only measuring a little bit longer than the 17-120 does. So it's at 11.1 inches. And only a little bit heavier, 6.7 pounds versus I believe it's about 6.3 on the 17-120. So you've got very, very similar designs that work great together. So it's amazing that we got that much range into a lightweight, small design like this.
That is amazing.
The sensitivity is really great on it. It's a T2.95 to 3.95. It does have a little bit of ramp at the end, like our 17-120, just to keep the size and weight down. But that only ramps to a 3.95 past 187 millimeters. So you have a lot of range wide open before you actually hit that ramp, almost a 7-to-1 zoom ratio.
That's amazing.
And it has a little hidden secret here. Well, not secret anymore. There is a 1.5x extender built into this guy, which actually increases that range out to a 37.5 to 375 millimeter.
That's amazing.
And it's only one stop light loss at that point. So it's really, really flexible. Obviously, it's going to be a great lens for all the industries that fell in love with the original CINE-SERVOs. Broadcast, live event, but it still has that cinema kind of picture quality that'll make it amazing for full-on productions.
So does the color match with the 17-120?
Yeah. So all of our cinema lenses all have that same color matching. Yeah, all the same coating. So you can go in between these. You can use them together. There's a lot of obviously great crossover range on this. So yeah, absolutely, the colors will match. Before I go too far, I just want to point out something about that 1.5x extender.
Probably what I was going to ask you.
It does have a benefit. What's that?
That's probably what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, probably.
Coverage, right?
Sorry, Joe. Yeah, the 1.5.
Go ahead. Let's hear it.
The extender actually will allow the lens to cover full frame sensors. Just due to the nature of the optics, when that extender is engaged, it actually magnifies the image circle to cover full frame. So, and again, with only one light loss, this is a really great feature to have. You flick that switch, you're one stop lower, but now you've got a 35.5 to 375 on a full frame.
That's amazing. It's great. So, so tell me about price points on both of these items. Where are we aiming for?
Yeah, we're who you want to start with?
Oh, with Paul.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. So definitely. So price-wise, C300 Mark III, we're looking at $10,999 US for this one, and availability later in 2020.
It will be out this year, like shipping.
That's what I'm told.
Awesome. So it fits in very well in between like the 1D and the C500 Mark II.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you guys aiming for this camera to service?
I mean, C300 Mark II owners, honestly. So think of the industries and people who fell in love with the original C300 and then moved to the C300 Mark II. This is the next step. It's the most versatile, I think. You look at the C500 Mark II, right? C500 Mark II has the full frame sensor. Not everybody wants the full frame sensor.
Mm-hmm.
Super 35 is still very, very popular, and will be for a very, very long time, if not forever. And this camera, that combined with the more dynamic range and the higher frame rates, might be perfect for somebody who's looking at the C500 and really intrigued by the C500 Mark II, but wish they had a little bit more in the frame rate department.
I've heard frame rates a lot in our industry. People really wanted the higher frame rates. Super 35, I mean, there's so much you can do with that chip. And the fact that you guys have that body matched up to that C500, I mean, it makes a perfect complement if you want to run two cameras and have an AV camera set up that way.
Yeah, great for, rental houses, definitely, and owner-operators especially, because there's a chance that, a C500 Mark II owner might be looking at this as their B camera right away. But really, the lines are kind of blurred now because it's pretty interesting, I think.
Well, do you want the full frame or do you want the frame rates? You can have either or. You can have both.
Exactly. Right.
So what about you?
Sorry. No, sorry. I was just going to do a quick anecdote because it's funny because a few of my clients are doc shooters here in New York, and right now I know a couple of their movies they're shooting the interviews full frame, but everything else Super 35, right?
Yeah.
So this is where that scenario can really come into play, where you have these basically two matching bodies that give you the best of both worlds.
100%.
So.
Awesome. All right, and the lens, what's the price point going to be on that?
So the lens is coming in at $29,999, and the same availability as the camera we're looking at later in 2020, but it should be out this year.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. And you already kind of touched on it when you were telling us about the lens earlier, but the goals for who you expect this lens to best fit?
Yeah, I'd say the same. Yeah, I'd say the same type of users as our existing CINE-SERVO lenses. And again, having the removable drive, puts it into more of that cinema manual configuration. So anybody doing, cinema or high-end production work, it's there. With the servo drive on, you've got that familiar broadcast feel and operation to it. You've got the remote ports as well, so if you wanted to set it up with your standard broadcast focus and zoom demands, you can do that. You can run it remotely. So, basically any industry that you can think of that's, utilizing broadcast or cinema lenses, this is going to fall into very nicely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you guys joining us today. I will have links for the products in the description, and we'll follow up with you to see if there's any other news coming out from Canon. So for now, make sure you give us a thumbs up, follow us, and pre-order your camera or lens or both if it fits your needs. And thank you guys very much.
Thanks,
Joe.
All right, bye-bye.